Once upon a time in the land down under, there was a hopping, fluffy menace causing quite a stir. Rabbits, those mischievous little furballs, decided to go on a wild adventure across Australia, wreaking havoc wherever they pleased. It was like they held a secret convention where they all agreed to dig holes, munch on crops, and challenge veggie gardens to duels. Aussies were like, crikey, not the rabbits again. They devised all sorts of creative ways to outsmart the bouncy invaders, from fencing off entire neighborhoods to throwing carrots in surrender. It was a real-life game of catch me if you can between humans and rabbits, and let's just say those bunnies were no ordinary buns. Australia learned its lesson: never underestimate the power of a fluffy tail and twitchy nose. In short, that is Australia's rabbit story. The story began when, on Christmas Day 1859, Thomas Austin, a self-made wealthy settler, released 13 European wild rabbits on his estate, Winchelsea, Barwon Park in Victoria. They had been specially collected and sent to him by a relative in England. While residing in England, Austin fancied himself quite the hunting enthusiast, spending his weekends in pursuit of rabbits. But upon his arrival in Australia, a land void of native rabbits, Austin hatched a plan. He sent a message to his nephew, the resourceful William Austin, requesting a shipment of 12 grey rabbits, along with 5 hares, 72 partridges, and even a handful of sparrows. His intention: to recreate his beloved hunting pastime in the Australian wilderness and add a touch of home to his new surroundings. Austin confidently asserted, what harm could a few rabbits do? They might just bring a slice of familiarity, along with some hunting opportunities. Unfortunately, William couldn't secure enough grey rabbits, so he resorted to supplementing the order with domestic bunnies. Scientists now say the continent-wide rabbit invasion resulted from this single importation, rather than previous multiple introductions. The first fleet, a fleet of 11 British ships that brought the first British colonists and convicts to Australia, when landed at Sydney Cove in January 1788, it was recorded that 5 rabbits were also on the initial transport. But they were never released into the wild. They were meant for the dining table. In Tasmania, some of the settlers brought in rabbits from Europe, and by 1827, rabbits were slowly but surely invading Tasmania. An early settler from Sydney, Thomas Holt, engaged in rabbit breeding on his Marrickville estate located along the Cooks River. Over the course of 2 decades, the descendants of these rabbits expanded their presence towards the west, reaching Camden, and extended southward to Bully. The year 1880 marked the moment when rabbits successfully crossed the Murray River, entering New South Wales, and within 6 years, by 1886, they had established a presence in Queensland. Eventually, in 1894, the rabbits had managed to traverse the Nullarbor Plain, leading to their widespread population in Western Australia. Within 50 years of introduction, rabbits spread across Australia, and their numbers reached around 800 million. There were no known predators, and food was plenty. What more did they need? The proliferation of rabbits was the fastest of an introduced mammal anywhere in the world. Even today, Australia has around 150 million feral rabbits roaming around. This incident happened in Colac in Victoria, is a classic example to show how people's attitude towards rabbits had changed from pets to pests. In 1846, a man was charged at the police court with having shot a rabbit at the property of Mr. John Robertson, of Glen Alvey Estate, and was fined £10. Within a decade, Mr. Robertson, of Glen Alvey, had also changed his mind, and instead of prosecuting rabbit shooters, he cordially welcomed them. To save his sheep, he had spent £5,000 in his efforts to be rid of rabbits. Apart from humans, the only enemy rabbits faced was drought. In 1895, at the beginning of the 8-year Federation drought, dead rabbits were found 2 feet deep along fences west of Nyngan in western New South Wales, and gates couldn't be opened until the dead had been scraped away. They adapted to any type of landscape, any type of weather patterns, and they reproduced all year round. As their population multiplied, the rabbits caused significant damage to crops and land, resulting in soil erosion. Their overgrazing had detrimental effects on agriculture and plant life, disrupting the delicate balance of ecosystems. The consequences of their presence extended beyond the destruction of Australian croplands, contributing to the decline of native plant and animal species. Then began the war against the rabbits. Farmers began building fences to keep rabbits away. Initially, these fences were found to be successful, and the government pitched in to build fences. Queensland began building rabbit-proof fences in 1893. The most iconic barrier was the rabbit-proof fence built between 1901 and 1907 that extended 3,256 kilometres north to south across Western Australia. It is estimated that by the height of the fence construction boom, there were 320,000 kilometres of rabbit-proof fence across Australia. But time proved that these fences were a failure as rabbits found a way to cross them. But it was not all gloom and doom. Rabbits were a blessing in disguise too. Australia made millions out of them by exporting rabbit meat and skin. Rabbits were a free source of meat that allowed Australians to survive during the Depression and the World War years. It provided employment to thousands. In 1929, the rabbit industry was reported to be the largest employer of labour in Australia. Moreover, during these lean years, trappers earned almost 10 times more than construction and metal trade workers. The rabbit meat preserving industry gained a foothold in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The Colac Meat Preserving Company in Victoria had factories in Colac and Camperdown, which treated nearly 1 million rabbits from April to October each year, and at least 200 to 300 rabbit trappers supplied rabbits to them. The Northern Rabbit Meat Preserving Company in South Australia, during its 2-year operation, processed 45,000 rabbits a month. The Mount Gambier Rabbit and Meat Preserving Company at Compton in South Australia operated for 20 years, and during its peak, processed around 4 million rabbits a year. The meat preserving industry in Australia suffered after the Chicago meat scandal of 1906, where meat preserving factories were guilty of using spoiled meat to make cheap products. As a result, Britain imposed restrictions on preserved meat imports. But by then, the frozen meat industry picked up in Australia. The rabbit skin trade was also doing very good business for Australia. During the 1890s, Victoria exported close to 10 million skins a year, and Tasmania around 4 million. South Australia was not far behind either. Between 1904 and 1947, Australia exported nearly 4 billion rabbit skins. It is estimated that Australians trapped nearly 20 billion rabbits for commercial purposes in 100 years. But at the end of the day, Australians proved to be a bunch of thankless people. From 1871 to 1883, Australian state parliaments were doing their bit by passing legislation to destroy rabbits altogether. Apart from building fences, governments around Australia were devising plans for the mass destruction of rabbits. All legislation made it compulsory for landholders to destroy all rabbits on their farms and stations and made it illegal to aid the spread of the rabbit. In 1877, the New South Wales government offered £25,000 reward for any method of success not previously known in the colony for the effectual extermination of rabbits. As a control measure, farmers destroyed the underground network of tunnels rabbits make, which is known as warrens. Destroying the warrens takes away the place where rabbits are able to safely breed and raise young. In the 1950s, biocontrol became the new mantra. Rabbits infected with Myxoma, a rabbit-specific virus, were released into the wild to eradicate rabbits. The Myxoma virus leads to myxomatosis, a disease that only kills rabbits. Needless to say, the power of evolution saved the rabbits soon. Rabbits eventually developed immunity towards the virus, rendering it ineffective. In the 1980s, scientists came up with Rabbit Hemorrhagic Disease virus, which is another rabbit-specific pathogen transmitted by flies, which can kill rabbits in 48 hours if contracted. After its official release in 1996, the virus managed to reduce Australian rabbit numbers by around 90%. Poisons were also used on a large scale to kill the rabbits. Sodium fluoroacetate was found to be very effective. Carbon monoxide and phosphine were also used to fumigate burrows and kill rabbits living inside. We dedicate this video to the souls of 20 billion rabbits that saved thankless Australians during its lean years by providing its skin and meat. Let them rest in peace. But Australia's rabbit story will continue because there are another 150 million rabbits roaming around in Australia still.